Hi, everybody. Very warm welcome to each and every one of you. I appreciate your time, and no doubt, I think it's challenging times where we are in the world right now. And I think right now, where the world is, and specifically also, I believe a lot of you are from South Africa. Myself, also fellow South African. For those of you that are from South Africa, likewise, I believe there's some of our international followers as well. Very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Right now, I'm speaking to you from Australia, Sunshine Coast in Australia. I'm Conrad Labuskaghni, as you probably know by now. I'll give you, seeing that we're going to be spending a few minutes together, so if that's in order with you, I will really quickly give you the Reader's Digest version of my background and where I'm coming from, the reason of the call, and so forth. On that note, allow me to start off by saying my career has always been in business. I left school at a very early age and started pursuing. I didn't finish school in the conventional way. I left school at an incredibly early age. As soon as it in fact became legal for me to leave the school, I left school. At that point, I've already been running businesses, as small and as primitive as they were at the time. They were nonetheless important to me. And from then till now, pretty much all I know is investment and business. When I reached the age of 37 years ago, or 37 years, I then at that point decided to sell my businesses and retire. And I did so for a couple of months, but as you can imagine, when you go on pension when you're 37 years old, you tend to get bored. So I started looking for a bit of a hobby. So I started looking and I thought, hang on, let me get into property investments. Now, all my businesses has always been retail orientated and so forth, running very big staff complements and so on. And I thought, no, let me do property investment because this will be just a nice little sideline business. I'll get some contractors in, fix it up, sell it, make a lot of profit, and so on and so on. And some of them I'll keep and I'll rent them out, and life will be fantastic. Of course, yes, sure, from a financial point of view, I was fine because I sold my businesses and were able to afford going on pension at that stage very, very comfortably. However, in the investment side or the property side, it didn't go all that well. To me, at that point of my life, obviously property and the extent of my knowledge around property has been restricted, or really just that of a property owner myself where I live, and the odd holiday home, and that was pretty much it. So I had no experience or training around property, and I didn't have somebody in my circle of influence either that was really doing particularly well out of property. So I started reading up on books. I found a book of Robert Kiyosaki and so on, and many others. Eventually, I decided I didn't understand necessarily all the detail behind the book in terms of how to do it. And I decided to go off to the US and go and learn and attend a live seminar with Robert Kiyosaki. In those years, obviously, he never came to South Africa back in those years. I met him at the seminars, attended all his classes, learned a heck of a lot, came back to South Africa at that time, and really started applying what I've learned from him. That went quite well, but I very quickly realized that you need a supply of property at a much lower price than market value. And of course, as you can imagine, who in his right mind will give a property away for less than what it's worth? So that led me down a journey where eventually I figured out I need to get them financially distressed. I made it then at that point my life mission and my whole focus, if you will, to find out how the financially distressed properties work. How does the industry work? I made it my mission to meet the right attorneys that operate in that industry, to meet the right officials at the banks and so forth. And I started also developing my own unique property models, and that eventually took off. Eventually, I was doing really well out of it, and I decided to spread my horizons to the overseas markets. And I made it my mission to go and learn how to do properties in Europe and the UK. And from there, the one thing led to the next. Again, applied the similar principles, but just more specific to those countries. And before I knew where I was doing really well out of the properties, and to the point where people would come to me and ask me to show them what I've done. And I did it on a private basis. And eventually, even that got too busy. And I started doing small little classes where people could come and learn how to do it and do it for themselves. From there, I also still continued my journey with Robert Kiyosaki, doing more and more of his classes, getting better at it. And eventually, I found myself also teaching many of his students. And the one thing led to the next. And Work Your Wealth was born in 2007. Back in those years, the intention was to be a personal development training company that specifically teaches two primary topics. The one topic is mindset, and the second topic would be property. Obviously, mindset is something that I've learned from a very early age, and all the rest of it. Plus, I've learned a lot from the likes of Robert Kiyosaki and many others. So I started teaching these mindset skills, and I started teaching the property skills. But as you can imagine, and I started even, as I said, teaching a lot of Robert students advanced property skills. And in that process, I came to realize that the majority of students that sit in a room attending the property class, they understand the property class, they love it, and everything is great, except one problem, and that is they do not have the financial ways and means to start. They do not have capital to start with in the form of deposits, and they do not have working capital to start with, and nor do they necessarily always have a good paycheck or a pay slip, if you will, that will allow them to get home loans from the banks and so on. So that led me to change direction a little bit, and I spent several years putting together a program where I would teach students to make money passively. But the key word is passively, just investor style, in other words, where students can make money purely passively without any form of activity of any sort of shape or form, purely investment style. That led us to where we are tonight. For many years by now, I've been teaching this particular model, and this is really what I'll be wanting to share with you. So if you allow me, I'm going to share my screen in a moment, and I'm going to be running you through a bit of a presentation, if you will. Let's just see how to change my screen, show my screen. There we go. Okay, that's not what you want to see. You don't want me see me talking in China. Okay, so let's start over here. So here we go. You'll see the main thing that I'm getting across on this slide is how to hedge and position yourself against the upcoming global financial crisis. What's interesting about that statement is this particular slide I've built in the year 2017, more or less halfway through the year. You might or might not know that Robert Kiyosaki started teaching and talking quite extensively about the next economical crash or financial crisis, if you will, in 2016. By 2017, I sincerely joined my voice with him, and all around the world, I was teaching and educating people, firstly, how to make money passively, but at the same time, getting themselves to a position where they are prepared to and positioning themselves correctly for, no doubt, what I saw very clearly as a very, very clear indication that the world is heading for a massive global financial crisis. Before I get into the global crisis, I want to talk a little bit more specifically about you. As you're listening to me, you'll notice that I'm dropping various characters onto the slides here, but you'll notice all of them have the same common principle in common here, and that is they're all spinning this wheel, and I call it the rat race or the hamster wheel. Now, from very early age, each and every one of us are really, through parents, through school, through many different influences, somehow convinced that the way to financial outcome that you want, the way to be successful financially, the way to make it in life, get yourself a good job. And really, years and years and years later, one found yourself still on the hamster wheel and you simply can't afford to stop. It goes a little bit deeper than that as well. And it goes to touch on what I call hours for dollars. If I were to ask you, how much are you being paid? And as I'm asking that question, I'm hoping immediately in your mind pop up your salary figure. Maybe you still got a salary, maybe you're working from home right now, or perhaps you lost your job, whatever the case might be. But just in your mind, think about what is the amount of salary that you would typically be earning. Put that amount in your mind. And that is typically how people all around the world, by now, if we fast forward, literally I've been teaching financial freedom skills, give or take, for the last 20 years of my life. So all around the world, whether I talk in US, Australia, Africa, Europe, Asia, it doesn't matter. Always doesn't matter where in the world I am and where in the world I'm talking to thousands of students, the same common denominator is always there. People are exchanging hours for dollars. Some of them are employed and some of them are self-employed. Self-employed is in a way still really working for a boss, except the boss is you, but you're still exchanging time and skill for money. I find some students all around the world that come to me and say, but they are a business owner. And I say, that's fantastic. How regularly do you go to the business? And they say to me, no, of course, every day. And I say, oh, what do you do there then every day? And they tell me, no, they do this and this and this and this and this. I say to them, no, let me explain to you. If you are a business owner, it would mean you would go there once a year, attend the AGM, and off you go. The business runs itself. There's staff in place to run that business, and that business has got a system that will keep on producing a predictable outcome. One is only a business owner when you can afford to step away from a business for any extended period of time, and the business will continue to do whatever it is supposed to do. So if you have a business, ask yourself, can you afford to step away from a business for at least a year? Will it survive for that year? If not, then the answer is it's not a business. You just call it a business, but it's not a business. You're employed. So getting back to the hours for dollar story, and so by the way, friends, tonight I'm going to be very, very honest. So it's not my intention to offend anybody, but I'm just warning you also outright that if I want to serve your greatest outcome tonight, perhaps it's the best thing for you that I'm very, very, very honest. So please forgive me if I'm very, very honest and very straightforward. Getting back to the idea of hours for dollars, I would like you to do me a massive favor and really super fast with your cell phone, grab your cell phone closer, get your calculator out, and let's do a few sums. Or grab a pen and paper, however you wish to do it. Let's do a few sums. Work out for me, how many hours do you work in a typical week? You work 40 hours, 60 hours, 80 hours. Coincidentally, South Africa average is about 40 hours a week. Of course, yours might be totally different. Work out for me, how many hours do you work in an average week? From there, you simply take the amount of hours that you work per week and you multiply it by 52, so that we can get to a grand total of hours that you work in a year. Now that you by now should have the amount of hours that you work in a year, let's do the next sum. And the next sum is, when did you start working? When you left the school, the college, the university, whatever it is, and you embarked on the journey of being full-time employed. From that year till now, how many years have you worked? So you take your annual amount of hours, multiply by the amount of years, very simple sum, and it will give you a grand total of hours worked, or as I often call it, hours that you sold at a certain price. Let's take it one step further. Let's see how well you've been paid for those hours. And we can say we love our jobs, and we can say all these wonderful things, and all of that's great, and maybe we do, maybe we don't. Point is, how much asset value have you acquired as a result of all that time that you've worked? Let's do a true test. Let's have a look at fixed assets, which is obviously property or properties that you might own. If you were to sell that property or properties, if you were to sell them today, how much can you get for them? Forget about how much you owe on them. If you owe on them, doesn't matter. Forget about that. Just focus on one figure and one figure alone. If you had to sell your property or properties, what is the collective value if you were to sell it? How much money will you put in your pocket on a realistic price basis? Then we move on from there, and we'll move on to movable assets. Movable assets would be anything that's yours, any asset that belongs to you that you can sell to another person. For argument's sake, your motor vehicle, your caravan, the boat, the Fender trailer, the, I don't know, the jet ski in the garage, the Harley Davidson in the driveway, the couch in the lounge, the dining room suite, the pots and pans, if you wish, anything that belongs to you. And again, I don't wish you to write it down item by item. You might want to do it at a later time. But for now, just think about if you were to take all of your assets, from the motor vehicle to the furniture, to the cell phone, to the laptop, to whatever it is that's yours. If you were to take it and sell it at a realistic price value, emphasis on the word choice, realistic price value, how much cash can you put in your pocket? Moving on from there, let's talk about paper assets. Now, paper asset is quite a mouthful, if you will. Starting off with your bank balance. If you were to walk into your local bank, how much money will you be able to draw? If you walk into whichever bank you bank, or banks that you bank with, and you go from the one to the next and you draw out all the cash that you've got there, how much cash will you have? Likewise, your long-term investments with a bank, if you have any. Likewise, if you've got a pension fund, if you've got a pension fund or a retirement annuity or even an endowment policy, RA, any of those things, if you were to today cash in on that pension fund, if you were to today cash in on that endowment policy, if you were to today cash in on that RA, whatever it is, how much value, how much money will you end up with in your pocket? Please do not make the mistake of calculating your pension or your retirement annuity or your endowment against the projection values or what you hope it to be or what it should be in whenever you go on pension. Work today's value. Moving on from there, let's talk about other assets. Now, this might be the business that you own. Maybe you're a medical professional, you've got a medical practice of sorts, you're a doctor, you've got a consulting room, whatever the case might be. Or maybe you're an accountant and you've got an accounting firm or an accounting consultancy or a tax consultant or whatever the case is. Any form of practice or business, maybe you've got a workshop of sorts where you maybe manufacture something, whatever business you might own. Again, if you were to sell it at a realistic value, I know us as entrepreneurs, we always think that our business is worth millions and millions and millions, if not billions. But the reality is, how much will another person realistically pay you for your business and take your business and go? Be as realistic as you can. Other assets could also be digital assets in the form of Bitcoin. Maybe you own a couple of Bitcoins or parts of a Bitcoin, maybe some Ethereum coins, maybe some Ripple coins, whatever that might be. If you own any form of other assets that we haven't spoken about, basically ask yourself, is this something I can sell, and how much can I sell it for? Am I allowed to sell it, and how much can I sell it for? Then it probably is an asset, and do a realistic value of its value today. So by the way, if you own cryptocurrencies, also please do not make the mistake of working on future expectation values. Work on the values today. Then you add it all up, and that will take you to a total asset value. So by the way, if for some reason I've gone through the slides a bit fast and you haven't managed to keep up, you're welcome to take some notes, or you're welcome to take a photo even with your cell phone if you so wish to. Maybe do it later on after the call, whatever the case might be. Then we move on to liabilities. Firstly, we'll start off with our home loans against the property or properties that you might own. If you were to settle those home loans, careful emphasis, I'm not talking about the installments, I'm talking about settlement figures. You might not right now know exactly how much you own or owe to the banks, but just for now, do a best possible guesstimate. If you had the money, let's say you win the lotto tonight or tomorrow, I'm not sure what day is the lotto, but you were to win the lotto, you take a chance and you win the lotto, and you win this 50 million or whatever it is. Now you got the money. How much of that money would you need to settle all of your bank loans in the form of home loans first? Secondly, any form of other bank loan, i.e. car loans, any form of movable asset loans, especially business owners might have some of the other plant or equipment on loans with the banks, possibly some credit card loans. If you had to square up your credit card loans, your personal loans with the banks, maybe a bank overdraft, whatever the case might be. Maybe even some loans with some of these private lenders, or in South Africa, it's very popular, direct access, Willy Wonga, and I don't know whatever other loan companies. Maybe you got some store accounts, maybe a Edgar's, a Woolworths, a Fushini, Truworths, any of those sort of things. Maybe you got a Joshua Door furniture account. Maybe you got a, what is it called, Hyperama account. Maybe you got a Lapnus, Ellerines, whatever it might be. Any of those store accounts. Over the years that I've been teaching this stuff, I've seen every imaginable form of loan. I've seen it with students. I've seen them all. So whatever loans you have, write it down and do the best possible estimation of how much you need to settle that loan. And then we go on to personal loans. And what I mean here with personal loans, I'm meaning loans that you might have with private individuals on a personal basis. For argument's sake, your brother, your sister, your auntie, your uncle, your cousin, your mother-in-law, doesn't matter, your neighbor. If you were to settle those loans, how much cash do you need to settle each and every one of your loans? This will give you a total liability value. Again, if I went through it a bit fast, and especially on liabilities, I would urge you to take a photo and go and do it very properly and very thoroughly after the call, because there's a huge amount of value in simply knowing the reality and looking at it on a piece of paper. There's massive value, but we'll talk about that another time. So for now, just take a photo if you need to. Unless you know the liability value, then that's fabulous too. Then I would like you to do the next sum, and that is you take your total asset value minus your total liability value. This will give you your net asset value, and hopefully it's a positive figure. But I also know, especially for younger people and especially those that went to study, invariably they got more loans than asset value, especially as a result of student loans and so on. And if your figure is in the red, that's fine too, as long as you understand it and as long as you're doing something about it. More importantly, why did I want you to do these calculations? For the simple reason that if you take your net asset value, divide by the total amount of hours that it's taken you to produce this net asset value. Because this goes back to my previous point. We can talk, say these beautiful things. I love my job. Get yourself a good job. Go for the 20-year golden watch or who knows what. But all said and done, people work to get a financial reward with the hope to somewhere along the line get somewhere financially. So let's see how well you've been doing at, call it the game of money, because in the end financial freedom is just a game. It's a game we're playing, and a game that's been played with us as well. And the question is, how well have you actually played the game up until now? What is your hourly rate? Many of you, as you look at this rate, you might say, oh my golly, is this all that my life is worth on an hourly basis? And some might be over the moon with what they see there as a result. Either way, good or bad, all I'm saying is this is a totally different way of looking at money and how you are creating an income, and what is the probability, more importantly, of getting to where you want to go if you exchange time for money or you exchange skill for money. You see, here's the thing. I understand hours for dollars extremely well, and the reason why I understand it so well, all my life I've been a business owner. Even before I left school, I was a business owner, and I leveraged literally, give or take, at the very least 50% of the grade that I was in, or standard, whatever, of the kids working for me in my business. And the reality is, I understand very well. They work for you for some or the other pay, and I pay and I collect the profits of a company, I collect the turnover of a company, and I pay them some or the other form of pay. Of course, I understand it very well because I started doing that from school. Now, I also want to change gears. Before I talk about the economical crisis, I want to talk about one more thing that I really believe you need to understand, and that is the steps and the steps in the financial journey. Wherever in the world I speak, people always come to me and say, I want to be financially free. What must I do? The first answer is always this: understand it's not a once-off destination. It is a journey. Each and every one of us, in all probability, start at something called struggle. Struggle is, yes, you got some of the other income coming in, you got your first job, you're getting your paycheck, whatever the case might be. But it's a bit of a struggle to accumulate some furniture, some vehicles, some place to stay, etc., etc. It's a bit of a struggle to make ends meet. People say to me, okay, but when do I get out of a struggle phase? And my answer is very simple. In this journey, the next phase is stability. Now, you transition slowly from struggle to stability, and that takes time. But I would say if you got at the very least, at the very, very, very least, 36 months, 3 years worth of current lifestyle expenses saved up somewhere in your bank account. I'm not talking about equity or value that you have in the form of your property or something like that. I'm saying if you got stashed away somewhere, whether it's in the bank, whether it's under the mattress, money that you can access without selling anything, and there's enough money to service your current living expenses for a bare minimum of 36 months, you would be at the latter part of struggle and the early days of stability. People say to me, great, then how long will I stay in stability, and what is after that? Because I don't want to be just stable, I want to be financially free. What comes after that? Am I then financially free? And I say no. After stability, you reach independence. Independence means, very simply put, if you from this moment forward, never ever, for as long as you live, you never bank another rand, you never bank another penny, you never bank another dollar into your bank account. in your bank account is already enough funds accumulated over the years or over whatever time that you put away, and it can comfortably sustain your lifestyle until you die. If you already got enough build up to sustain your lifestyle until you die, then you could be at the latter part of stability and the early days of independence. What comes after that? Financial freedom. And that is if you got enough income or enough capital build up in your bank account somewhere without selling anything. There's already enough money lying there waiting. And the size of this money is enough to pay month by month your, what I call your DMI, your desired monthly income. Your desired, key word here, desired monthly income. If there's enough money saved up to pay for your dream home, your dream motor vehicle, your dream lifestyle, your dream vacations, not survival lifestyle, not survival home, not survival motor vehicle, your dream, your desired financial state, in other words. So you got to go and do some digging and some soul searching. What does your monthly desired income look like in order for you to live your greatest life ever? How much money do you need on a monthly basis? Let's say right now you earn 50 grand. Let's say you do all the sums, you think about where you would want to stay if you got all the money in the world, what cars will you drive, etc., etc. And you come to the conclusion you need 150,000 to pay for your dream home, to pay for your dream car, to pay for everything, whatever you want to do. Money's not an issue. There's enough money to do it. That's the figure I'm looking for. So if you got enough money saved up to offset every single month your desired living expenses or desired monthly income that you need to live this fabulous lifestyle until you die, even if you bank no more money, then you are financially free to do whatever the heck you want. And then, of course, the people ask me, so is that the end game? And the answer is no. Then it really starts. And that is the end game, financial legacy, where you are not building wealth for you, but you're working towards building wealth for future and normally unborn generations to come, or from your offspring in some or the other way or shape or form. You're working towards a financial legacy that you want to leave to your favorite charity, whatever it might be. So now that we said and spoken about that, let's get back to the big burning topic, and that is the economical crisis. Here's the problem with consumers all around the world. There's a few key factors that there's many factors. I don't have time to get into all of them tonight, but I'm going to hone in into a couple of the key factors. One of the key factors are consumer debt. As you're listening to me, you might say to me, but hey, Conrad, I don't have car loans. I don't have credit card loans. I don't have overdrafts. That's great, but it still affects you. It still influences you, other people's debt. How? I'll explain that in a moment. All around the world, consumers, South Africa, America, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, does not matter where people stay. Bottom line, as I travel the world, people finance their lifestyles, or the majority of people finance their lifestyles by taking out more and more and more consumer debt. As you're listening to me, and of course, that's one of the advantages of doing the seminar as we are today. I can't very well tell you to put your hand up and tell us if you got debt or whatever, so you can feel quite relaxed. But the fact of the matter is, maybe you got loans or debt, or maybe you don't. But here's the thing. How many car loans have you had over the years? How many clothing accounts have you had over the years that you paid off? How many credit card loans have you had over the years that you paid off? And what is the true cost of that? Have you ever truly sat down and worked it out? Have you ever truly, really worked it out? And my suspicion is no. Most people wouldn't, because there's two ways to calculate the true cost. Let's take a car as an example. Somebody goes, buys a car on HP or loan or lease, whatever the case might be. And you might say, well, listen, I'll take my installment multiplied by the amount of months plus the deposit. Once it's all paid off, plus a balloon, if there's a balloon applicable, that will be give or take what it's cost me. But that's not the true answer. The true answer is also there's another consideration, and that is what would have been the cost of an alternative choice. Meaning, instead of paying a car off, and instead of buying a car, and hear me out today, by and large, I don't have a problem with cars. I have a problem with financing them in most cases. Unless there's business method in it, then it's a different story. But I'm talking normal consumer usage here now. If you're paying off a car loan because you don't have enough cash to buy the car cash, first question is this: is the value of a car going up or is it coming down? Obviously, the value of a car keeps on going down, firstly. Secondly, is the car in the normal general usage of a car? Is it producing you an income? And in normal general use of a car, in the normal sense of buying a car, no, it's not. It's costing you money on a monthly basis, firstly, to repay it. Secondly, it's costing you money every month, every year, whatever the case is, to keep it on the road, to keep it in a good running order, to pay the licensing fees and whatever else. So it's a continuous drain on your cash flow, not just to service the debt, but also to do the secondary cost associated with that car. But tonight, I don't even want to drill into that. Tonight, I just want to talk a little bit about the alternative choice of cost by just calculating how much the car is really costing you. So I'm going to quickly just change gears here for a moment, and I'm going to pull up a simple Excel spreadsheet. And those of you that's paying off a car is probably not going to like this exercise very much. But let's say you bought the car for, I don't know, what is a reasonable car in South Africa nowadays? Let's just say 200,000. So you buy the car for 200,000. Oops, I put in the wrong amount here. Let's say you put a 10% deposit down. So you put down 20,000. So let's just say we roughly take 200,000 divided by what's the average term. Let's just say, 200,000 divide, what am I doing? 200,000 divide by 60 will give you approximately 3,300. Let's call it 3,000 just as a round figure. Let's say you pay this off over a period of, let's just say 60 months, you're talking 203,000 that you paid into it, plus of course the 20,000 deposit. But what would have happened if you were to make another choice, and instead of buying the car whose value is going down, and by the time you paid it off 5 years later, you're probably not going to sell it for a hell of a lot. You might sell it for, I guess, 20, 30, 40 grand or something like that. But what would have happened if you take the very same 20 grand and the very same 3,000 a month, but you were to put it into what I call an income generating asset, something that will produce income for you while you sleep, something that will work for you 365 days a year without you lifting a finger. I'll explain income generating assets later, but for now, all I want to illustrate is what the impact would have been. So let's say you get yourself a profit of 2.5% a month out of this income generating asset. Now, you will agree, you put down 20,000 deposit, you put down 3,000 every month thereafter for the next 60 months. After 60 months plus a deposit, you would have put down 223,000. But at a monthly profit compounding by 2.5%, have a look, over 500,000. What would be the value of a car? 50,000 if you're lucky. Which one would you rather have? Of course, I'm hoping you will say the car, the income generating asset instead of a car. But let's have a look. I also want to show you the immense power of compounding. Now, remember, I worked here at a percentage of 2.5%. Let's just change it by 0.5%, and we move it from 2.5 to a mere 3%. Before I click it over, remember, it calculated to 509. Can everybody see my screen, so by the way? Let me just make sure the guys can see my screen. Can
Yes, I can
somebody
see your
just
screen,
confirm
Conrad.
for me that you can see?
Yes.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see
Oh,
your screen,
wonderful.
Conrad.
Okay. So there it is, 509,000 if you were to get a monthly return of 2.5%. Now we change it by just 0.5%. Now we change it to 3%. Have a look. Oh my golly, 0.5% a month profit made a difference of, I don't know, 100 and something thousand without lifting a finger. Now, if you go and talk to any of my students, hundreds of thousands of students, they will tell you to work at a 2.5% profit or a 3% profit a month is ridiculous. Let's work something realistic like 5% for a start. Now you might want to take a deep breath. Maybe take a very deep breath. Because let's go one step further and let's get serious. And let's say for a moment, we are serious about creating wealth. Over 4 million. How many of those cars can you buy cash if you are willing to have a different approach? Am I against cars? No, of course I'm not against cars. I also have them. The fact of the matter is, all I'm saying, I've just used cars as an illustration of what consumer debt does. Because the very basis of consumer debt, and I understand consumer debt very well. Why? Because I'm a debt investor. I buy consumer debt. So I understand the psychology very well. People live off debt. They finance their lifestyles living off debt. So let me get back to my slides. Cindy, if you can just give me a heads up again that I'm back on my normal slides.
Yes, we can see them, Conrad.
Thank you. So all around the world, consumers are buying stuff that they don't have the money for today, but they can't afford it, but they take it in the form of a loan, whether it's a car loan, clothing account, whatever it might be, and they buy it today and they keep on carrying that debt burden. And this thing gets pretty heavy over the years. Of course, for you and I that don't have consumer debt in that sense, it still have a direct impact on the cost of living for us as well, which I'll explain in more detail a little bit later on. There's another big problem that's causing a massive role in creating this economical bubble or crisis that the world is facing, and that is technology. I speak for myself as an entrepreneur and a business owner for many years before I went on pension. Of course, any business owner will put in whatever automated systems he can in order to reduce overheads in the form of wages and so on. Rightly so. His job and his concern is the well-being of a business. But as entrepreneurs are putting more and more emphasis all around the world into becoming more streamlined and more automating their business operations, likewise, there's technology advancements that have a massive impact on historical big job creators. For argument's sake, cell phones. Cell phones has come and everybody loves their cell phone. So do I. I also got the latest cell phone lying here next to me. But the fact of the matter is cell phones has had a dramatic negative impact on the amount of jobs from the old telephone companies as in the past. You will remember the days when we used to have telephone lines at home. Maybe you still have one, but the point is, if you were to make a phone call, if you're out of the house or out of the office, you would have to drive around in the road until you find a street pole with a little blue box and go and stand there and make your phone call there. Those days are come and gone. And yes, cell phones are so much better, but it creates less jobs. So I'm not anti-technology, I'm merely saying it reduces jobs. Likewise, emails. You'll remember the good old days when the mailman would come with a bicycle or a motorcycle and deliver mail to your house. Today, that is something almost unheard of. Less and less jobs are being created all around the world, and that of course have a massive impact on the country's economy, on the country's taxation base. The more and more the world automate, the less and less jobs, the less and less taxes. You might wonder what this has to do with you. The answer is it's got everything to do with you, because those that do pay tax and there's less people paying tax, guess what? You'll have to pay more tax. There's a further problem in the global financial crisis, or that causes the global crisis financially, and that is population growth. All around the world, new people are being born faster than what jobs are being created. It is not just the case in Africa, it is the case all around the world. In many parts of the world, people even get a financial incentive for having more and more children. The more children they have, the more financial monthly assistance they get from the governments. I'm not saying governments mustn't do that. I'm merely saying if you reward people for having babies, guess what? They're going to be making babies. You can pretty much believe me, a dime a dozen. What does this do? More and more people are being born on the planet each and every day, faster than what jobs are being created. But government expenses are also going up faster than what government income is going up. Because if we produce more people by the day than what we can produce jobs, we are effectively reducing government's income and increasing expenses. Put all of what I said now in a different way. Here's an American dollar, a picture of an American dollar. If you look at the bottom left of the slide, you will notice the American dollar in 1913, and you would see that this American dollar, right on the far left side, you would see it had a buying capacity of $1 American dollar. You can see what happened in 1933, and you see what happened in 1944 when it came down a bit, and then Bretton Woods got established, the USD as the world's reserve currency. Basically, in very, very, very simple terms, what happened is in 1944, when Bretton Woods was established and the USD became the world's currency or reserve currency, but the United States of America currency, the US dollar, was underwritten, if you will, or guaranteed, if you will, or backed by a piece of gold. So for every American dollar, in very simplistic terms, there was a tiny piece of gold that would lie in a vault somewhere and says this dollar has the value of $1. Why? Because he has a piece of gold that says it's worth $1, because gold is an intrinsic asset, all right? Then in 1971, President Richard Nixon from the United States of America had a brainwave, if we will. I'm not sure. But the fact of the matter is he had this idea, and perhaps it was not necessarily even choice-driven. Perhaps it was very desperate, states-driven. But whatever it was, he decided that he no longer needs to back the American dollar by a piece of gold. He effectively closed the gold window and Bretton Woods and started the modern day fiat currency system. Now, when you start looking to the right-hand side of the slide or the picture, you'll see by 2013 how this is impacted. You'll see the buying capacity by 2013 of $1 American dollar. Here I'm doing the exact same demonstration, but in a slightly different way. 100 American dollar in 1913 would buy you $100. And you'll see as I click through the years how fast it drops down in buying capacity. To the point by 2019, that same $100, it's still a $100 note, When you pull it out of your pocket, it's still $100. But it now in 2019 buys you only $3.87. Why does this happen? Well, it happens for two reasons. A, devaluation of buying capacity, number one, which is fueled by two things: increase in the cost of living, inflation, but it's also heavily influenced by the amount of money that the governments print, money that does not exist, money that just get printed out of thin air. You see, prior to 1971, every dollar had some or the other value in the form of gold. When that changed after 1971, every American dollar and every South African rand and every Singapore dollar and every Australian dollar has only a promissory value, no longer intrinsic value, only a promise note value. Many of you that might be a little bit older will remember a day in time in the past, a blast from the past here. We would go shopping before we walked around with Master and Visa cards. We would go to the shop and we would shop, put the stuff in the trolley or the basket, get to the till, and then say to the cashier, "Here, today I would like to pay with a check." And we would pull out a little thing out of our bag or whatever. And it was basically a piece of paper that you would fill in, and you would write there whatever the store name and the amount of money you owe them, and you would sign it. And this check then would get presented to the shopkeeper or the till or the cashier. The cashier would look and see if the check in question has perhaps been reported as stolen or not, and then accepted it in good faith, assuming it was not appearing on the stolen checkbook list. In good faith. So it was nothing other than a promissory note that the next day, when the shopkeeper goes and banks it, the money will be sent from my bank to the shopkeeper's bank account. But there's no guarantee that that would actually happen. That system didn't work very well. It essentially was nothing other than a massive stuff up. And the world did not have much of a choice to come out with something better, and that became Master and Visa cards. Now we walk to the shop, we get to the front, we still don't have physical money with us, but we have this piece of plastic that says Master or Visa, and I would put it into a funny little gadget, and that gadget would read it and say, yes, there's money, or no, there's no money. And that's how it's evolved over the years. But what has happened, as this system got more and more and more sophisticated, more and more money has been printed all around the world by governments all around the world, and that has caused the massive devaluation of buying capacity as the one culprit, the other one, increase in the cost of living, and so on we can go. Let's talk about government's role in this little story. We can talk about the United States. You'll see in 2008, the American government debt was $10.7 trillion. This is in 2008. By 2019, in fact, the date of his slide is dated the 29th of November last year, the American government debt is $23 trillion. Now you might say, but that's only the Americans and they can afford it. Guess what? They can't. But let's carry on. It's not just the Americans. Here's Germany, the biggest economy, or shall I say the strongest economy in Germany, $2.5 trillion, 29 November last year. The Italian economy, $2.9 trillion. Poland, 310 billion. Romania, 88. Greece, 414. Spain, 1.5 trillion. Portugal, 316. UK, $2.4 trillion. United Kingdom. Maybe you say, okay, it's only an America thing and maybe a Europe thing. No, yes, Malaysia. China, 5.4 trillion. Let's have a look and see if the same applies in Africa. Guess what? South Africa, 222 billion. Now, what's the problem with this? Is this a problem? I would say. Why is it a problem? Here's the GDP growth from South Africa. You will see for the previous quarter, less than 1% growth. Now, how are you supposed to service 222 billion of debt if your GDP growth is less than 1%, in fact, 0.78%? This kite's not going to fly. Is that the situation just in South Africa or elsewhere in the world? No, everywhere. This is the collective world debt clock dated the 29th of November 2019. $77 trillion. The interest on that alone is no longer serviceable. Then happens fast forward to 2020, and all of a sudden the world is faced with something called coronavirus or COVID-19. Here's some of the impacts that we saw in the early days in China, estimating millions of dollars of loss of revenue for hotels, tourist industry, Cathay Pacific in Hong Kong, estimating on the 7th of February for the airline industry losses of between $63 to $113 billion. On the very same day, yes, this fellow walking through the Hong Kong airport, you will see the flight announcement board overhead of him. And you'll see most of them, although the print might be a bit small, but bottom line, all of them are blue, or most of them are blue. As far as I can see, roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 flights were cancelled. This is in the early days of coronavirus. Interestingly enough, on the 13th of March, no, on the 12th of March this year, I flew at 11:02 in the day. I flew out of the Taiwan airport, and have a look at how many flights were cancelled then, the 11th of March. This picture from then till now has not got any rosier. In fact, far from it. Causing massive market reaction, causing trillions of dollars being wiped out of the trillions of dollars that took years and years and years and years and years to get. Trillions of dollars, of which portions of it belong to me, portions of it belong to you, portions of it belong to your pension, portions of it belong to your retirement annuity, your endowment, your RA. Wiped out of the markets virtually in the blink of an eye, if you will. And the reason why the world is lying on a global debt bubble, you can understand, I'm sure, if you were to every single month pay your loans, whatever loans you might have, and you were to pay them not through income because your income is too little to service your loans. If your income is too little and every month you take out a new loan to service the old loans, plus the following month you've got to take out a new loan to service the new loan that you used the month before to service the other loans, of course it's not going to work. It is actually not rocket science. One would have thought in 2007, 2008 banking crisis in the US, the world would have learned a lesson from that little debacle. But interestingly enough, the world felt the economical impact of a 2007, 2008 American banking crisis, found the economical crocodile tail impact well into 2014. Yet, it was really just the housing crisis and the banking crisis in America. Coronavirus, on the other hand, guess what? Coronavirus knows no borders. It has no regard for passports. It has no regards for continent. It has no regard for race or anything else, nor industry. Coronavirus has an impact on the whole world. Now, just for a moment, understand what I'm saying here. If a banking crisis in America had a global economical backlash effect well into 2014 and even beyond, what do you think is going to happen with the coronavirus? Is it all dark and gloom? No, far from it. Very far from it. This is what wealthy people do. Wealthy people understand this very well. And they understand the worst possible idea and way to make money is by working for it. They make money work for them. And they accumulate income generating assets. It is literally that simple. It is not rocket science. I've spoken about this. I'm not right now going to get involved in that. I'm even going to bypass this here. I want to talk about this, leverage. Wealthy people understand the power of leverage and they understand the power of compounding. Often at my live seminars, I say to people, who understands the concept of leverage? And invariably, a lot of people put up their hand. And I say, great, keep your hand up. Out of those of you that got your hands up, if you got your one hand up now, if you also understand compounding, put up your other hand as well. And then many people got both hands up in the air. And I then say to them, all right, if you understand leverage and you understand compounding, then why on earth are you here? Please explain to me if you understand, why are you here? Because I would love to tell you financial freedom is this very complicated story and you got to be super smart and so on and so on and so on. But it's not true. There's only two things that will create wealth, and that is why I opened the discussion with the hours for dollars exercise that I did, because hopefully I got you to, in a very tangible, very real way, get you to really for once and for all see in front of your eyes that working for money is the worst possible way to make money. We all know that. But the question is, are we doing something about it? Leverage is all about using other people's time, other people's skills, other people's money, other people's everything. Other people's pain, other people's opportunities, other people's literally everything. And then tagging it into a system, or incorporating it, if you will, into a system that you always continuously get a compounding benefit. You see, the problem with the hours for dollars, that hopefully by doing the exercise, and I'm really from my heart hoping you have done it, and if you haven't, go and do it. Because it just creates a whole new level of understanding and realization that you're fighting a losing battle. You cannot win the game if you're going to exchange time for money. Doesn't matter how much money you get per hour. You see, here's the problem. I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of medical professionals just in South Africa alone that's members of my student community. Hundreds of them. Hundreds of them. Then in fact, just on the doctor side of things, then I haven't started with dentists and optometrists and you name it. These people all earn a fantastic hourly rate. But how many sellable hours does any person own, firstly? Secondly, there's another problem to it. It's not just about the amount of sellable hours that you have at your disposal. It is also about another factor. And this one is a little bit harder to get your head around. And that is, you're selling the skill and you're selling the time. And you get a benefit once off. Now you want the next bit of money, you need to get another. You've got to sell the next hour again to get the next bit of money. And you've got to sell the next bit of skill. Now, if you want to create financial freedom, you need to create a pretty big size amount of money. Firstly, time is in short supply. Time is your own single biggest, scarcest, most valuable commodity that you have is time. And you're trying to trade time for money, which you need in abundance. You need money in abundance to create financial freedom, but you've got time in short supply. I do not know on what planet it makes sense to think that selling time for money is going to change the finances. I really don't get it. In addition to this, you've got a further problem, and that is, as much as you might be the best, I don't know, accountant in the world, you might be the best lawyer in the world, you might be the best doctor in the world or dentist in the world or whatever it is. And that's fabulous, fantastic. But you do only get paid if you pull the guy's teeth once, he's going to pay you once. You want more money from him, you got to pull another teeth. It's that simple. So the same if you're a business owner and you own a restaurant, let's say. Maybe you're in South Africa and you own a Spur restaurant or a Wimpy bar or even a McDonald's franchise. Let's say you own a McDonald's franchise and you want to make money and you sell the hamburger and you make some money. You put some money in the till. But now to put it for the till to open again and take the next bat of money, you got to sell another hamburger, which means your income is restricted. You're trying to create something in abundance with a source that's restricted. It makes no sense. I don't know, maybe it does make sense to some people, but I just don't get it. To me, the key is multiple passive income streams. And when I use the word phrase passive income streams, I mean literally passive income streams. So the key phrase that I've highlighted even in red here, I do not know how to make it any clearer. It means that there's not allowed by definition to be any exchange of time, nor can there be any exchange of skill. Because in either way, you're going to be pretty screwed. Because if you're exchanging time, all of us have time in short supply. And as much as I'm sure your skills are fantastic. Mine, well, I'm a high school dropout, so mine is nothing to write home about. But the fact of the matter is, doesn't matter how much skills you've got, you only still have that amount of skills, but you're trying to create money in abundance. It just makes no sense whatsoever. What you do need is something that will act as your rock, that will give you long-term security and long-term capital growth passively, but in such a way that it outperforms the devaluation of buying capacity. Now, what does that even mean? What is the inflation for you in South Africa, my friends? What is the increase in the cost of living? If I ask you the question in two different ways, if I ask you first up, what's the inflation? You might tell me the inflation is 5%, 6%, 7%, 10%, whatever. But if I ask you what is the increase in the cost of living, you're probably going to give me a different answer. And that would be correct. The problem is people in their minds naturally assume that their increase in cost of living is similar to the government's inflation. It's not. It's two very different things. Your household has got a completely different inflation to the country's inflation. Your household inflation is vastly different sum because it's made up of a different product mix and a different product dynamic to the government's GDP or main line. So if you can just set yourself up with your first income generating asset must give you security that it doesn't matter what happens in a time of economical crisis, this thing will stand. And it doesn't happen whether the markets go up or down, it's irrelevant because this thing will stand. I'm talking along the lines of gold or silver, something like that. and it will give you solid, secure, long-term capital growth. In the second place, you need an inflation buster in your recipe. Because if you do not find a way to outperform devaluation of buying capacity on your money, quite frankly, you're going to be in big trouble. Let me explain why. If I give you 1,000 Rand and I say to you, go to the local Pick-a-Pay and buy yourself some groceries today. Off you go with 1,000 Rand, you get to Pick-a-Pay, you buy yourself some groceries. You walk out the store with some groceries in your hand, maybe 2 packets full. Had I given you the same instruction and the same amount of money 5 years ago, I'm sure we will all agree that you would have walked out probably with a trolley full maybe, or at least half a trolley full. And had I given you the exact same story, but 10 years ago, you certainly would have left with, I don't know, 1.5 or 2 trolleys or whatever. So that means the stuff that matters to you and I have a very different increase per year than what we think inflation is. Let me put it in another way. If you take 100 grand, 100,000 Rand, and you give it to your favorite bank and you leave it in your favorite bank for the next 5 years, and you say to them, guys, I'm going to leave this 100,000 Rand here for 5 years. After 5 years, I'm coming back. Every month, take my interest and pay it into my account, add it to my 100 grand. In 5 years, I'll be back. And then I'm going to close the account. I want to take the 100 grand plus the interest out and give me the best possible interest rate. The question I now have for you, with how much money will you leave the bank in 5 years from now? And this is a lot to digest, but here's the naked truth. If you put in 100 grand today, or 5 years ago, should I rather say, and you leave it there for the next 5 years, and let's pretend today is 5 years later now. Let's say you left it there in 2015, and today is exactly 5 years later. It's now 2020. So you arrive at your bank and you say, hey, bank, remember this money that I left here? Here's my little book, or here's my card, or whatever. And I say, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Great. Give me my 100 grand back plus interest. How much money are you leaving the bank with? And yes, you might leave with 110, 112, 120, whatever. But it's an illusion. Why do I say it's an illusion? Because that buying capacity of that 110 grand is somewhere at best in the region of about 50,000. Now that's a stuff up. Your 100 grand that you put in would have clocked interest, and let's just say you walk out with 120 grand. But the buying capacity, the amount of stuff you can buy with that 120 is only worth, at best, 50 grand. Now, that means your money's buying capacity half in 5 years. That's pretty serious, because how many of you get around about a 20 to a 30% salary increase per year? You see, we like to talk about these good jobs, don't we? Okay. So if they're so good, how come do we not get a salary increase that's greater than 20 or 30% per year increase? I met very few people around the world that tell me they're getting more than a 20 or 30% salary increase per year. Let's bring it closer to home. I'm talking to my fellow South Africans now. Not so many years ago, you will all recall the Marikana massacre. What really happened there? I'll tell you what happened. That miner started working at that mine many years ago, and he got a wage or a salary. And with that salary, it was very tiny, but with that salary, he was able to, at the end of a month, take his salary home, buy a big bag of maize meal, feed his family for the whole month. He would have some change left to buy bread and milk every so often. And he might have even had some other change left as well to buy the other little odds and sods here and there. And then over the years, every year, he got a salary increase in line with the so-called mainline inflation. Every year he got this salary increase. And the world is saying, but why are these people resorting to violence? Why are these people, why is it turned into a massacre? Why is these people so unreasonable that they're demanding more and more salary increase because every year they got mainline inflation or even maybe slightly above? Guess what? What a sick joke. Mainline inflation and the average consumer's increase in the cost of living is two very different things, my friends. That very same miner year on year might have got a mainline inflation increase. He doesn't care about the mainline. He doesn't care about any of these nice words. All he knows, many years ago when he started working there, the money was enough to buy a bag of maize meal to feed the whole family. Years and years and years later, despite all the salary increases, still working as hard as ever, but the money he now gets is enough to buy a bag of maize meal, maybe for a week or two instead of a whole month. But guess what? His wife and his children are hungry 30 days a month, not 15 days a month. And the money that he had spare previously for an odd bottle of milk or a loaf of bread, maybe now buys a small, tiny little bottle of milk and maybe a half a loaf of bread or a quarter of a loaf of bread. That's all he knows. And many of you might have seen over the years and wonder what is going on here? Why is everybody getting so upset if they're getting all these so-called wonderful salary increases? Why are they being so unreasonable? And the answer is very simple. You can CPI and mainline inflation until the cows come home. It means jack shit to them. It's about, is this person getting an increase that meets the same ratio as his increase in his cost of living, yes or no? And it's not, let alone moving forward financially. So if you do not have an inflation buster in your recipe, you might have a disaster on your hand. I recall my late father telling me when I was at school, Conrad, go to school every day, get yourself a good education. Then one day, once you got the good education, go to university, get yourself another good education. And then once you got that, then go and find yourself a good job, like me, like mom, like your brother and your older sister, your older brother, your older sister. And I look at this story, the good education, the good university, the good job, and I'm wondering, how does this work now? Because mom, yeah, it's true, she's got a good job. It's so good, she's actually got two of them at the same time to make ends meet. I had the most amazing parents, make no mistake. But I had a mother that worked in the hospital day shift and at night walked to the local old age home from a day shift and worked at the old age home a night shift to make sure she could keep the household going. I had the most amazing father. But likewise, he worked himself into poverty. He saved himself into poverty. He literally saved himself into being a poor man. In the sense that I remember when he turned 60, he went on to pension the first time. He went back to work before he was 61. And then he stayed on working until he was 65 because the pension wasn't enough. And then he went back to work until he was 65, went back on pension. But again, within about 18 months, he was forced to go back to work. And he went back to work with a happy heart because he was a very proud man. And the fact of the matter is he carried working until he was 72, 73 or something like that. All his life, my parents has been the ultimate role models in terms of so-called financial responsibility, saving themselves into absolute financial poverty. I recall a small boy catching the bus with my mom on a Saturday once a month into Johannesburg so that she can go and bank her money and do her shopping for the month. I remember the first port of call for the day outing was going to the United Building Society, and she had this funny little booklet with her. And she would stand patiently in the queue, and she'll get to the front, and the person will take it, and they'll take the cash, count the cash, stamp the book, and off she would go. And she would put some money away. That's what she went to do there. And I would often ask her, Mom, why do you give these people your money? Because I knew we were struggling, despite her 2 very good jobs. And despite my dad's very good job. I knew there wasn't money for the bicycle. I knew there wasn't money for new clothes. I knew it was always the hand-me-down story. So I couldn't understand why is he giving these people this money? Because it's too little money. And she would say to me, I'm saving one day so that I'll be okay when I can't work anymore. Well, I can tell you today, I'm very happy. My mom will be turning 90 today. My father is sadly late. But my mother today, in fact, a couple of weeks from now, will be turning 90. She lives in an old age home facility in Sea Point, Cape Town. But I also know that all of her life savings, plus the inheritance from my dad, plus running 2 jobs for most of her working life, and she also worked well into, I think she went on pension at 78 or 79 or something like that. All of that working today, she can service round about 11% of her vrouw care monthly bill, let alone pay a medical aid contribution, let alone a few extras here and there. So I don't understand the story about this good job, but my friends, what I want to tell you tonight, and I hope you hear my heart, if you don't have something that will outperform the inflation 6 love, you're going to pretty much be screwed. You need something that will make you passive income. I call it a wealth multiplier that will make you money 365 days a year. In the words of Warren Buffett, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. It's that simple, period. You need capital growth strategies that will give you decent returns over 3 to 5 year cycle. You need a passive income generator. I sometimes in my seminars talk about the ATM that you need. Everybody needs to have their own ATM. You need short-term capital growth strategies. You need to be serious about creating wealth. If there's one thing that COVID-19 has taught the world, everybody, whether you got one of these good job things or not, who the hell cares? You need to have a business on the side anyway. And even if you don't use it, but just have a registered business so at least you can get the tax benefits, for crying out loud. Nobody's saying, and I'm certainly not saying to you, go and resign your good job. If you want to have it, have it. I'm not sure why, but have it if you want to have it. But at least learn how to get yourself set up with a legal business, at least create your wealth through a business so that you can have some of the other form of taxation benefits and so on and so on. Likewise, you need to have, I'm starting to run through this very fast because my time is running out fast. I wish I had more time with you, but I don't. You need proper structures to do your stuff in. Structures that can stand the test of time. You need to be into multiple property investments. I don't know, maybe you do have some property investments, but I'm not talking about your home. I'm not talking about your holiday home. I'm talking about properties that you're renting out 365 days a year. And you should have them in South Africa, and you should have them internationally. And you should even have commercials. And you must be, as I'm saying this, many of you might be saying, this guy, I don't know what's wrong with this guy. He must be on some serious good stuff that he smokes. Where am I supposed to get the money for this? And the answer is through your income generating assets. Each and every one of us, at an opportunity like tonight, are reminded, hopefully, and hopefully if I've just served that purpose in your life tonight, to remind you that your financial future is your problem. You see, for years and years and years, the world bought into an idea, put your money in the bank so you can sleep well at night. Well, I've got to tell you, the more money I have in the bank, the less I sleep at night. Because I know it's a stone cold fact. Like it, don't like it, build a bridge, get over it, my friends. The more money I have in the bank, the more I lose. Am I saying the bank will steal it? No. I'm saying devaluation of buying capacity is guaranteed to eat it up. If you for a moment think you're living in South Africa and it doesn't affect you, all the stuff I've spoken about is Europe and America and what. My friends, go and get onto Google and go and do the research. Derek Watts from Carte Blanche, him and his merry men, did an exercise a couple of months ago. In fact, I think it was mid 2019. And they did an analysis of a typical average South African family. The parents, the two parents, husband, wife, and two children at school. What is the devaluation of buying capacity on average that the average South African family is facing? Their conclusion, 30% per annum. I don't know what it is because I don't live there anymore. I live in the Sunshine Coast of Australia. But I can assure you, yes, also devaluation of buying capacity. It's just a different figure to what it is in South Africa. But what I can tell you is this. If you think that your devaluation of buying capacity is anything less than 20% in South Africa per year, you might just be in for a very nasty surprise. What I just said, I'm saying it in the context of prior to coronavirus impact. When coronavirus broke out in early 2019, we started a whole new era that the world was not prepared for, including South Africa. And nobody knows how it's going to pan out. Nobody knows. What I do know, if you think the devaluation of buying capacity is going to slow down, you're clearly not understanding what I'm trying to tell you. The devaluation of buying capacity is going to go through the roof to all-time new record heights. And the question is why? And the answer is very simply, prior to the coronavirus outbreak, the South African government published their quarter, that particular quarter's figure, in other words, end of 2019, with a GDP growth rate of less than 1%. Now, you cannot offset or service 222 billion worth of debt with a GDP growth rate of less than 1%. It's not going to work. You don't need a master's degree in maths to work that one out. Likewise, this was now the situation prior to coronavirus. With all the credit rating agencies, South Africa got downgraded to junk status prior to coronavirus outbreak. Then we go one step further. We have a look at, let's say, the likes of Eskom. Eskom fundamental problem is this. Many people are consuming electricity over many years, but not that many are paying. And the number that are paying and the number that are consuming is not working out. It's that simple. And in addition to that, there's a bunch of inefficiencies and corruptions and whatever else added to the pot. And added on top of that, any plant needs some or the other form of maintenance. Any plant needs upkeep. But not only does any plant need upkeep of sorts, it also needs to increase capacity as demand increase. And here's the problem. Eskom has been unable to increase capacity. So it's been running at flat out capacity, overloading the ability of production, therefore basically breaking the system. And they constantly have to patch the system. And by constantly patching the system, they're doing more harm than good. But the problem is not everybody likes to pay, but everybody likes to use. Now, that's pretty much the story of the South African government and any other government all around the world. People are breeding faster than what industry and government can create jobs. So now there's more and more people on the planet and in each different country consuming resources such as roads, such as hospitals, and whatever else. So there's more people on the planet creating a bigger drain on the government income, pushing the expenses up, but there's less revenue coming in. It's a recipe for disaster without coronavirus. So here's the reality. You need to be prepared. Personally, prior to the coronavirus, me and Robert Kiyosaki were talking about a global financial crisis. Since the outbreak of the coronavirus, we started adjusting our story. Nowadays, I'm talking about a reset of the economy, a complete reset at best, possible outcome. Now, me personally, I think I don't understand how the system can survive. Because why can't the system survive? Because here's the thing, United States of America alone lost something like 30 million jobs about 6-7 days ago. That number is not stopped by now. That number is now busy working up towards 40 million unemployed. Now think about it, 30 million people that had a job in December 2019 and went on Christmas holidays or whatever else. And then shortly after New Year went back to their jobs. And all of a sudden today somehow no longer got that job. Whenever this American economy is restarting, and I know the states are desperate to start restarting as soon as possible, why are they trying to restart so prematurely? Think about it, guys. Why are they so desperate to restart so prematurely? Because there's no alternative. The longer they stay in lockdown and the longer they take to start restarting the economy, the worse it becomes. Because small businesses and other businesses, even big businesses, are folding by the day. folding by the day. I don't need to tell you what's been happening with the South African Airlines. I don't need to tell you what's happening with Eskom and any other of the government companies or any other private companies. Many of you, as you're listening to my voice right now, might find yourself in a situation where you're already unemployed, and many of you might be well on your way to being unemployed maybe sometime soon. You might not even know it. Is it all dark and gloom? No. It's the best time ever. Now, what a contradiction in terms. Now's the time to make more money than ever before. When you go into the history of the world and money specifically, and you were to go and do some serious research, when does great wealth transfers take place? It's a time of war, time of uncertainty, time of the greatest fear, time of panic, time of uncertainty, time of collapse. I think we pretty much met that criteria now. I think we're pretty much there. In the words of John Rockefeller, he says, or used to say, the time to buy is when the streets, the roads are flowing with blood in the road. That's the time when to buy. Horrible expression. But that's when the wealthy make even more money than ever before. Does that mean you must abuse people? No. Does that mean you must take advantage of people? No. But if you are financially correctly positioned, you might just be able to sustain the storm, you and your loved ones, and you might just be able to create and be part of the biggest wealth transfer in my and your lifetime. There's no doubt whatsoever, whether there's economical collapse, whether there's economical reset, whether we walk away from it with a Great Depression, a recession is globally no longer humanly possible because we long gone surpassed it globally. So now at the best possible outcome, we can talk about a Great Depression, but even that would be near impossible. We can talk about economical reset if we're very positive, or perhaps a collapse. We don't know, but let's be positive. Now's the time to set yourself up in such a way that you're making money and you got some hard assets. And when I say hard assets, I'm referring to things like gold and silver. In the words of J.P. Morgan, gold is the only money in the world. Everything else is debt. That's all it is. Gold is the only money in the world. Everything else is just debt. That's all it is. So you need to set yourself up with multiple sources of income. Amongst others, in today's day and age, and I don't know how many of you got any knowledge around cryptocurrencies and so on. I'm scanning through it very fast because I don't have the time. I don't want to keep you longer than what I promised. I promised I'll be done in 2 hours. I don't want to keep you a minute longer. But here's what I know. We can't afford to ignore cryptocurrencies. We can't afford to ignore property as an asset tool. We cannot afford to ignore gold. We cannot afford not to have the right structures that will protect our assets and have multiple sources of income that will finance property investments and many other investments, so that you are free to do whatever you need to do of your life. And you're making money even tomorrow or the next day or the next day. If all goes well, you're back at work and life carries on as normal and none of these bad things happen. Fantastic. But guess what? Somebody's still got to pay the bill for the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions that the South African government printed in the last couple of weeks. That will have the most incredible, devastating impact on the South African rand's buying capacity. If you think you saw the rand sliding in the last couple of weeks, that's not because of the printing of the money yet. That is still going to come, unfortunately. You might wonder, okay, so is it really all dark and gloom? And I can tell you in all honesty, no. Now is the best time ever to change the rest of your life financially. I wish you all the very best. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the online class. Until then, stay safe. Do what we have to do all the social distancing, do whatever you have to do to stay safe. Be kind to one another, and I'm looking forward to seeing you real soon on the live class. Till then, God bless. Thank you and goodbye.